So, before doing everything we need on our computers, I will show you what you need to do to prepare your mobile phone because mobile phone is physical device, not virtual device. It works much faster and sometimes more reliably than your virtual machine. So here I have Samsung version of Android. I'm not very happy with this, but when I needed to get some cheap phone to get my AirPods working because it was discontinued to work on older versions of Android. So I chose this, and unfortunately on this particular hardware LineageOS is not working. Yeah, if we talk about Android, there are several versions of Android. There is Google version of Android. And almost nobody uses this particular version of Android because if you do not put operating system on phone by yourself, only phones which had this particular version of Android was Google phones. How these were called? Pixel. So if you do not buy this hardware, Google Pixel, then probability is almost zero that you will use this particular. And then there are forks of all these vendors which take Google Android and add crapware and malware for it, like Samsung Android and let's say Sony Android and HTC Android and all these other ones. And then if you choose hardware from Samsung, you get Google Android forked by Samsung and added different stupid things. In general, this is just crapware which steals your data and share it with Samsung instead of sharing it with Google. And so that's what you get. And of course, when you look on something like Samsung version of Android, you start to understand why, for example, iOS users are so fond of their iPhones. But then there are some other forks, like more open and better versions of Google Android. On my previous phone, I previously used Android version or fork actually called Cyanogen mode. But then it was not so well supported and not so developed. I also used LineageOS, which is fork of Google Android where all this crapware is removed and it's more configurable, etc. It's still some version of Android from kernel perspective and API perspective, but it has minimum amount of applications already installed, etc. So your battery life is better, your phone lasts longer because there is no built-in planet obsolescence built into this phone, etc. And I used my previous phone for 7 years. And the only thing I needed to switch it because I do not want to recompile this LineageOS by myself, and I couldn't set newer version for this LineageOS, and AirPods didn't work for this older version. So now I'm using this Samsung Android fork with all its crapware. I have cleaned it up a little bit, but it's still pretty bad if we compare it with LineageOS. And so you go to your settings, and then of course I have it in Latvian but in English it's something like about your phone. And in about your phone you have to find out build number, and particularly for Samsung Android it has like 3 of settings, so you need to go inside other settings as well. And then somewhere here you see I have build number, and you have to tap 7 times on this build number to enable developer options for this phone. And when this is done, you go back to general settings again, and then you should see another entry here, visible developer options. And that's not it. Then you need to go to developer options, and if these are not enabled, you enable them. And then you go through all these settings, and what is important for you is in these developer options at least USB debugging. There it is here. And everything else is up to you. You don't need to do this. It looks like my connection disconnects every time I open this small dialog window. And when it is done, then your your phone should be ready to be used through your USB cable from your Android Studio. And when this phone is prepared, then I do not know about Android debugger tools for Microsoft Windows, but what helps you a lot to understand what is wrong or not wrong with your phone is that every time you can do different things, the same thing, with different tools, you can understand, is it problem of your tool or is this problem of your environment, etc. And when you have enabled Android debugging, one thing you can do is your phone is to connect to it using like SSH connection. Only difference is I think it's not encrypted, and there is no so many command line tools available on this remote shell than on normal personal computer or IBM PC compatible computer, but it still does these basic operations like list. And for example, when I talked about this persistent storage, then I think it's located somewhere here. So you can list all these files for particular application. Maybe we can look something like for example in my camera. So here are some files what I could browse also through the graphical file manager. And here you have seen even top commands, but remember, set of these utilities which are available for Android phone is much smaller than on personal computer or server, and there's also no bash shell interpreter but sh, which is much less user friendly. For example, auto completion with tab doesn't work and some other features, so it is some kind of bone shell which is much less feature rich. So this may be useful also to get into your phone and see what is happening there. Oscar's asking, can you install customer ROMs on newest phones? Yes, you can, but there are caveats because it may be more or less tricky. For example, I have Samsung Galaxy A41, and last time I checked, it was not possible to install because LineageOS was not compiled for this particular hardware. And I think it's still the case. And then you may need to go through more or less hassle, for example, to switch off this built-in signature checking for kernel of your operating system, etc. So it is very dependent on your hardware vendor and your particular phone. And Samsung actually it's not the best vendor for providing mobile phones to which you can install your custom operating system, like HTC or Sony, as far as I can see in internet, probably are a little bit better. And of course there are so-called open phone or free phone, how it's all called. Phone project, open phone, but it's quite expensive. Then of course you can install different kind of operating system by yourself, like even maybe Ubuntu or whatever, but it is actually depends on your hardware vendor and your particular hardware. So we can assume that probably our phone is ready. Now about Android Studio. So when you have downloaded this large archive, then you put it somewhere and extract it. And I have done this already. And I extracted and renamed this folder just an Android Studio. And you run it from studio sh file, and for Windows probably it's studio.bat, I think, and you can create some kind of launcher for it, etc. So I have created launcher on my desktop for it and I run it. Okay, we can remove some of setting files to see how it actually looks like. Let's delete these settings. And then it should look like this. I'm still not convinced that I see there are some other things. So where are some other settings? So here we have some cache. I will not delete this folder because it's very large and it takes time to download, but I will search for all settings to reset them. Gradle. So only thing I have left here is another folder which is quite important. So your IDE is extracted somewhere else. For me its IDE is Android Studio, but when you will set it up it will also create probably a folder called Android, where you have software development kit and native development kit. And here are specific libraries for specific platforms and Android versions to make images and compile your application. As you can see, I have collected here 12 gigabytes of data, and with my network connection I do not want to lose everything here, because here it also has images of virtual machines, etc. But everything else is reset, and hopefully when I will run it now it will show how it starts. Yeah, so it starts something like this. Import Android Studio settings. I will do not import anything. And then here in general Android Studio is based on IntelliJ IDEA. So those of you who are using IntelliJ IDEA, you will be at home more or less. And I think I will choose, and here of course I use light because I do not consider dark mode something sexy and modern, and probably finish. And here, depending on how fast your network connection is, you will again need to download quite a lot of files inside this Android folder. And this may take quite a lot of time. And if we are bored, we can look what exactly it's doing here. It downloads for me, I think, latest and greatest Android SDK. So while it is doing this, we can talk about other things, about Android versions and API versions. So here are, let's say, Android versions, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until to, let's say, this is version 10. And for each of these Android versions, initially they had at least 2 different API versions. Okay, so this is time, and this is something better. So for each Android version you had approximately 2 different API versions. And for example, if you use Android 10, your API version is approximately 30 something. So later there was more different API versions than Android as a total version of Android. And what this API means, you should remember they do the same approach as for Java. For each new API version, something new is introduced. Let's say it's something like something new is introduced, something new is introduced, something new is introduced. But if in some previous version something was deprecated, how can we show it? Okay, here is something deprecated. Then in this newer version it is deprecated, is not supported. And then again, in some newer version something new is introduced, something may be deprecated, something what was deprecated in previous API version is not supported anymore. And of course, what is new, what is deprecated and what is not supported anymore is not biggest part of entire API. These are usually just some small gradual changes in each particular version. Therefore, you may compile something for, and let's say somewhere here, we have this one, API 20, and if we compile it for API 20, we will get compilation error, of course, if we will try to use something what is not introduced yet or what is not supported anymore. And we will compile, and if we run it on some older version, so this is compiled version, compiled for, if we run it actually on some older version, if everything what was used in this particular compilation set is still supported, no new features were used here, it will work. It will also work in some older version if everything what was deprecated and not supported anymore is outside of scope of your particular project, but probability is larger and larger that something will not work because more and more changes are collecting here in these gradual changes. It probably, this support range will be very, very wide. For simple applications it may be very narrow. For very specialized applications when very specific API set for GPS, for navigation or whatever is used. And therefore one of important parts about Android is to set up what I call Holy Trinity for Android development. And what are these Holy Trinities? These are three things. So you create your Java project, some app, and then you compile it. And then you run it, let's say either virtual machine or physical phone, and then your project settings actually also influences how do you compile it and how you will run. And for example, in your project settings you may say that you will compile it for API version 26. I will show you how to do this, so you set it up, my API will 26. If you will not have compiler for API 26 and libraries, you will get compilation error if it's different. So you need to check that your so-called Android software development kit, these settings SDK has all these libraries for API 26, and then you may run it. But if your physical phone, let's say, have API 20 or virtual machine has API 30, you may get runtime error because for this library how it was compiled, because of these deprecated features or new features used, etc., something may be deprecated in newer version of API in virtual machine, or something is not introduced yet in API 20 what you have actually in your mobile phone, and then you will get runtime error. And therefore, if you do not try to test how exactly this support with overlapping features is still supported, then easiest way is to do first to say that you have the same API for your project settings, then you have the same API for your software development kit for all of these libraries to be able to compile it, and then you have your virtual machine or phone also the same API 26 which runs, because then you don't have any differences between API used here and API actually run here. And some years ago, when I was also working as a teacher in Vidzemes School in Valmiera, and I participated in examination committee for these baccalaureate students in IT, one of students showed quite weak results for development of his Android applications. That was a few years ago. Now things have been improved. And one of his defenses was that he spent 2 or 3 weeks just to get his development environment working. And why did he spend so much force? First, he didn't read enough documentation, and second, he didn't know by other teachers about this holy trinity of project settings, software development kit and virtual machine to be compatible, that it actually works in all these stages to be compilable and to be runnable. And here we will do this simple stupid approach. We will not do any deviations between API versions, because then everything should be 100% compatible. It may work with something else, but we will not test it out how well this support is. And here we will compile everything for Android version 8, and API version is 26. So we first go here for SDK Manager, and in Android SDK we check that we have support for API level 26. If you do not have it, check it and press OK. And if you will not have it, you checked it, you will need to wait for some time for it to download. Then second, we will run it in virtual machine, which is Android Virtual Device Manager. Here we will create compatible virtual machine as well. So we go to create virtual machine, phone. Here, for performance reasons, we will choose the smallest possible screen resolution, because virtualization of graphic is very slow. And if you take large screen for this virtual machine, it is always slow. But if it is large screen, it is unbearably slow. And then we press next. And here again we need to choose API level 26. And here I will show what images can we have. Here we have images for these virtual machines for IBM PC compatible processors, 64-bit version or 32-bit version. And these are recommended for performance reasons, because then we run this virtual machine on compatible hardware. But you should know that there is actually almost no actual phones using this kind of architecture, because only few mobile phones were manufactured with IBM PC compatible hardware with Intel Atom processors. These were these Windows mobile phones. How these were called, I don't remember. So here, if our application is more or less dependent on platform, we will run our virtual machine on virtual device which actually do not exist in nature. But if we are more oriented only on high level abstraction like user interface, etc., we don't care about it. We run it on IBM PC compatible architecture, this x86, and for newer processors, of course, we need to have this x86 64-bit version for it. So, and if we do not have this, we need to download it, and it takes time again. Because you see, one image of this virtual machine is approximately 1 gigabyte again. I'm surprised that I do not have it, but can I switch back here? No. So then we have to wait a little bit again. And because Google uses unpaying developers for this community version of Android Studio as a unpaid beta testers, their approach is very simple. Every time you install Android Studio from new, everything latest is forced upon you. And because they want to see how it works. And then, of course, if you share their data and you provide some feedback for them, they are happy for that. But if you do not want to be unpaid beta tester for them, then of course you set up one particular set of your project settings, development tools and virtual machines, and then you switch off all these warnings about possible upgrades and recommended upgrades, etc. So you can upgrade the engine itself like Android Studio, but aggressive upgrading to latest and greatest API versions, you will see. If you work as an Android developer, you will see that you can spend too much time here only on your configuration management to get your development environment ready. If you know something about TCP/IP networks, it may happen that your computer and server agrees on too slow transmission speed because of different reasons. And then if you see that for some reason they agreed on too slow speed to download files, sometimes it actually saves you time to try it again than to wait for this slow connection to finish. So, and then there are these other images which are ARM architecture, and almost all mobile phones in the wild are based on this ARM architecture. Actually, there are new computers again which are based on this ARM architecture, like Apple new MacBooks, And actually I also this year switched from PC compatible x86 architecture servers to this ARM servers. Where is difference? For example, there is command to name -a, which shows something about your operating system Linux kernel. And one of things it says what kind of kernel version you have. I have blah 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 low latency because I sometimes edit sound and video, not a standard kernel. And here it shows on which particular platform it works. It's 86-64. But I have my home router, which previously used MIPS processor, but now it uses ARM processor, but 32-bit version of it, not 64-bit version of ARM. But some servers, like Odo.lv, it is also ARM 64-bit version of ARM architecture, because it's cheaper. And why it's cheaper? Because it saves electricity for Amazon, because it's more efficient. So if you need to know and emulate actual hardware, then you actually should use these kind of images, because this is architecture what is actually used on real mobile phones, but these are usually not recommended because these are even slower. And so when I have downloaded it, we use API 26, small screen resolution, and I can create such virtual machine. And then I may be brave and I will create a simple test project. I will not be brave to start running or doing this actual project, because I want to check that my development environment and your development environment is ready with simpler projects. So we create new project with basic activity. Then later you will choose something else for different situations, but for testing environment, basic activity is enough. I will call it very unimaginatively like test. My programming language will be Java. You may use Kotlin, and Kotlin in many ways is actually better than Java. And here you may use and say minimum SDK is just 16, but then you may be limited on what features you have in this particular. We may be brave and we may say that minimum version is API 26, which we have on our virtual machine. And if your mobile phone is quite new, you can use this as well, because currently widely used Android version is version 10 with API 29, or even Android 11 with API 30. So we will use more recent API versions to have less issues with configuration, etc. If you want to try it out on your physical phone and it is older, then you may choose this compatibility level on older API, which you can check in your settings of your phone. And then you wait. When you are Android developer, you have to wait quite a lot, so get used to it. And so while it's doing here, because I have my muscle memory for Eclipse, and here IntelliJ IDE is very user friendly because it allows me to use all these most important key combinations to be used from Eclipse settings, not from native NetBeans settings. And that's very nice of them. And it's still building. I don't like default fonts too much because I think these errors are too impressive. For example, I think that the best readable fonts are Deja Vu. Where is file settings font? Maybe here. So I think that for me, for my taste, Deja Vu Sans Mono fonts are the best, and these are something else. And of course, readability is important, and there shouldn't be such stupid fonts like Arial, where capital E and lowercase l is the same. But these differences between fonts, I think, also shouldn't be so explicit like it is for these particular fonts. But because I tend to set these settings twice a year for bootcamps, I usually do not change it too much. So, and then if we are optimists, we can say run for this application, run entire application. Mobile phone is not shown. One more thing is, when you enable this USB debugging and you do connect your phone first time, okay, I will show it in different way because I lost that. So, you'll see something like this. And of course you need to accept this. So when first time you enabled USB debugging, remember USB similar to Ethernet, similar Bluetooth, etc. Each devices have their unique addresses. Connection, you say, okay, I accept it for this computer all the time. So, like this. And then, for some reason, another message here. And then you are done. So, and now here is Android emulator. Where is my application? I will rerun it. So still virtual machine here. Run again. Why it doesn't start? We just need to wait. No, not something. How do I go to home? Either this or that. Let's deploy it again. We see something. I have some problem. Installed build tools version is corrupt. Why I have revision 31? That is not right. And where was the settings? Maybe here. Yeah, build tools version. So I need 26. Why I don't see this one here? Now build successful. Maybe I need to recreate entire project because something is not great about. I had to be more careful when I did these initial settings, because here what I see, I don't like this. I think this is the most recent version of SDK, but our agreement was that we will do it with older one. And if you can't get this project working, then of course there may be problems getting working that project which you actually will need to work on. So I will recreate it and will be more careful with settings. So here I can't change anything else. Maybe I will choose this one as well. The default approach from Google is following: that you download Android Studio and you create project, say next, okay. And you are developing, you are compiling, and you try to run it on the latest version, probably not the greatest one, but the latest version for Android API. And so Google use you as a unpaid beta tester for these latest versions of Android Studio and API versions as well. And if you want to be sure that you create project which is still compatible with your older infrastructure, then if you are not regular user, then you have similar problems like me. Let's double check what do we... This doesn't look good still, because SDK version, we can change that one, but here I can't even choose anything older here. I have never seen this file, at least in details before. Values v28. That is something wrong. We will double check what we have here. API 26. And tools, SDK manager. Okay, just for testing purposes, I allow it to use this newer version of API. Even though I know that this project will be different than project we will need to work on later. But on here I need to hope that project which is compiled for API version 30 will still be runnable on virtual machine with API number 26. We'll see out how it will work. But at least now this generated project should be compiling. I still see some warnings here, but we will ignore warnings. This is typical Google. They force me to use newer version of API, but their code generator is not updated for this. And of course, if I'm nice, I'm happy to report to Google that when I create new project and say just next, okay, my generated code actually doesn't work. And what can we do? We will try to create another project. Maybe we will be able to generate some some basic activity. So problem here is that generated code, what is generated here with this creation wizard, is actually not compiling against my settings in my development environment. And by the way, what's your success? Have you created some test project which is actually compiling and working on you? Maybe it's in your environment, it's a little bit better. But I don't need version 31. I have not installed. Okay, I can install it. Maybe that will change something. think I did that. Maybe I didn't that for this particular project. And did I change it in proper place? And scripts. Project. Well, nothing interesting here. Okay. Well, at least now it was built. Let's try to deploy it. There still are some warnings. And it is just warning, where is my deployed application? Something still. And now we have something. So that's great. And similarly, if you have enabled these settings for your mobile phone, then here you can choose your physical phone and try to deploy it on mobile phone as well. And of course, if your phone is older and Google forces you to use all these latest, not greatest, versions of API, etc., it may not be working. Might succeed. Yeah. So, and if you get it working on your mobile phone as well, so that means your development environment is ready. And only now we can actually go into actual project. I think I don't need these projects anymore. And do what is required to get credit point. So, design for this project already is provided. And we need to clone it. From this place. So here it is, this test project. To that place, and for me UXX should be U00. And then we need to create this application unique for entire class for me to be sure that I have installed and tested new application, because if ID is the same for application, I may test application from some previous student deployed on this virtual machine, not from current student project. And it's easier to do this, for me it's easier to change these files not inside of Android Studio, but for these setting files. So you do something like leave pad, which would be notepad for you in command line. Of course, your current folder should be Android blah blah blah. Not leave pad. What do we have on Xubuntu? Mousepad. Leave pad was for Ubuntu. And here I change this to what is required: lowercase, u00, that is app name. And then also for package, also add what would be Notepad or Notepad++ for you. Here and SDK version is 28, but minimum is 26. That's interesting. And here the slash should be changed to 00. It's on compiler SDK version, on target it's 28 actually. Okay, I will think about this, and if something will not work, and then we open this project, and my experience it showed, so I'm not regular developer even in normal Java like Eclipse or IntelliJ IDEA, so I do develop Android applications even less frequently. But my experience it has shown that instead of opening this project, you always should be importing them, because of this Google policy to force you to go to latest versions, etc. So if you import it, it checks these things more and maybe updates some settings for this project for it to be compilable, etc. And maybe because of these upgrades, actually in this project, it says that it will use API 26, but we saw in this Gradle settings it's API 28. And here I have problems that my native Java version is Java 11, but what I can do. And as you can see, that particularly for Android Studio, I think most of Android developers are still using Microsoft Windows instead of Linux. So for backward compatibility, I have Java 8 installed. Then there are settings. I don't know about you, but at least for me, this current version of Android Studio looks quite broken. And I'm not surprised that some of unfortunate students can claim that they spend 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever weeks to get their environment working. Where is Java versions? When I worked in testing business, one of my colleagues, if he saw behavior of application like this, he described such applications like a broken mosaic, that you have to pick up different broken things and somehow glue them together into entire picture. And what is here? Build, what is here? Language and hierarchies. And maybe I will need to delete all these gigabytes of previous data also for these settings as well, because usually if you set it into clean environment, it works. It's not so bad as for me today. I don't see anything what I can configure here by myself. These are for editor. So what can we do? Let's check. I think you can do some break here, and probably I will need to spend some time to reset my development environment to a completely new one, and then we can analyze it together. But in general, inside this project, what you need to do is following. You need to implement simple similar color slider application. Where is layout, activity 9. So you have similar screen with sliders for colors, and inside this code you need to implement that background color for this activity is changed accordingly to this color slider. And for me to demonstrate it, I need to get my development environment working properly, so it will not work well with such broken mosaic as we see here. So let's say break till, probably I will need some half an hour maybe. And then hopefully, it's not half an hour, okay. Yeah, so you may get different kind of errors because this project is not uplifted each week as Google suggests for us. But one of things you can do is you can try to upgrade Gradle version Or you can downgrade your Java runtime from Java 11 to Java 8. That's in general. How exactly it will work out, I don't know. So, I will not spend your time doing here unproductive things, so I will connect to you back when I will be able to show something useful. Hello everybody again, I hope somebody is listening. So what I have done during this time, I deleted all setting files for Android Studio, and also I downloaded latest version of Android Studio, which looks a little bit differently. And it looks to me that if you remove all the setting files or some older version of Android Studio and then try to recreate them, because it's not latest version anymore, so it's not well supported and it behaves like broken mosaic. And also what I have done so far is from in Software Development Kit Manager, I also downloaded and installed this SDK version for AP level 26. And I also created in Android Virtual Device Manager this virtual machine with API 26. So as far as I can tell, I did everything right with latest version of Android Studio. And now I will try to import this project. So I will be optimist, I will not test not create another test project, but I will import it and will hope for best. Let's see how it will be behaving. What are these new things here? So far I'm very unhappy. Maybe you have similar problem with me. Invalid Grail GDK configuration found. And here, what can we do? I know that in general I'm using Java 11, but I have also installed Java 8. If I'm using everything latest, I should try like this one. Still doesn't build. Okay, we may try use Java 8, which I also have. Doesn't look great at all. We can use this embedded GTK. And now I have a similar problem to you. At least some of you. This is just appearance. Okay, let's check something else, what we can go out. I don't know about Windows, but I will try to update my Gradle version. But I have 5.6. I have much newer than they are talking here about. And I have much newer Gradles available here, like 6, 8, okay. So I'm not sure what to do here exactly. Okay, it doesn't work anyway. I will remove this version of Gradle. And I will install latest version of Gradle, which is this. I'm a little bit surprised about this because I think that in this gigabyte of data not only a local version of Java runtime is included, but also version of Gradle should be included as well. So, and if Android Studio uses this external Gradle available in my operating system, then definitely it should use version 7 now. And now what we can do here, Grail scripts. What is blue button? Link? Thanks. Something at least is working. But I still wonder where this Gradle version comes from, because what is available in operating system previously was 5 dot something and now it's 7 something. And while it's doing this, so let's check what we have inside this file. Dependencies on Gradle 3.1. That is very old. And maybe proper solution would be to update this project to something newer. Nothing interesting here. So this may be causing problems, and I'm not exactly sure what this Gradle wrapper does. But at least something is working. So, is it finished? Looks like so. So now we can try to run it. Why don't I have this virtual machine available for me? Oh. So, I don't know about you, but what I feel here is that Google got what they wanted from me. They are using me as a beta tester for them. And when it's closed source application, when I agreed about end user license agreements, I'm pretty sure not only these things are sent here for them. This is just public interface for this so-called telemetry data, what we are sending to them. So, but still, I think that my virtual machine is not compatible with this project, because if Android Studio refuses to run it on machine, then usually that means that this virtual machine is not compatible with these project settings. And here, similarly to run configuration for Eclipse, in theory you can create this configuration by yourself, but in practice I don't know how to do this. So only thing we can do is, because it works like broken mosaic, sometimes it helps if you just restart this project, try to rebuild it in such way. If this will not help, we will try to update these settings for this Gradle building system to something else, because this suggested thing about some kind of Gradle wrapper properties didn't look very great to me. And yeah, I can see that still my virtual machines, which are defined, and you'll see here it's even running, but this particular project refuses to be run on that virtual machine. And you see, I just close it and reopen this project again, and voila, my virtual machine and physical phone is now available here. That's how this magic works, and this is just proof. If you think that Eclipse is quite broken IDE, then you haven't had enough experience on Android Studio. And congratulations, this project somehow was compiled and somehow was deployed on my virtual machine. And if I'm brave, I can try to run it also on my physical computer. Physical phone, not computer. And voila, it also works for me here. Of course it doesn't work for business requirements, but it compiles, and as Linus Torvalds said about Linux kernel, if it compiles, it's good. If it boots up, it's perfect. So we can go here on Git and check what are now differences here, what we have changed. here. So what I have changed here with all these clicks, because all these clicks sooner or later finish it in settings in configuration files. So here I changed my package name for this project, and for some reason it shows it as some error for that version. Here we changed Gradle wrapper. I don't understand this diffuser exactly. I will use something different. So this is tool which is easier for me. Not that, but -d. That's what I wanted to see. And so what I have changed with all these clicks and simple edits. Here I changed application name. Here I changed package name. And here I changed my binary file. Oh, it's jar file, yeah. And here I changed Gradle. As far as I can tell, there was such file already. So what helped for me, and I can write it in chat, in Gradle wrapper this file. So that's what I have changed with accepting these recommended things. And now we can start doing business, finally. So business here is to implement similar color slider application in Android operating system. And graphical design is already given, so it also uses this model view controller approach. We don't have much of model because we don't have much of structured data to store. But here in activity underscore main.xml we have static structure designed for this application, and it's stored as XML file, and you can look at it as a graphical design or XML file. I don't see button here. So you can look at also on this in such way. So that's already given for us, we don't need to change it. And then here is our controller, which needs to respond on changes on these sig bars. And here at least last time I checked, there are no any possibilities, for example, to select element and just say something like add event handler for it automatically. So no nice forward reverse engineering or integration. There is no integration between this graphical view, static view, and actual Java code. What you have to do is something like this. Here you create SIGBAR instances or these variables, and then you use like JavaScript approach, find view by ID, resource, object, ID, SIGBAR R, and if you go to this code here, is code, you see that this is this identifier ID is, I don't know what is exactly this meaning here, at plus ID, but this is that one. And then we need to implement change listeners, and because we do not have nice code generation and wizard possibilities, here we have some cheat list, and cheat list is here, I think, yeah, in this link, change background color by SIGBAR. And actually here entire project is given to you, only difference is names of variable are different, I think name of class or activity is different, so you need to refactor it, but in general all code what is needed is given here. And therefore this part, initialize variables, is done for us. I don't remember about this method. What do we have here? We have get color. So code we need to write is first calls, here is declaration of these listeners themselves. So something like this. So it should be outside this onCreate method, somewhere here. And we do not have update background, but we can also declare update background method if we like. And we need to refactor it. So here again, to exchange data between internal methods where only local variables are available, we do some of coupling. In general, coupling is always bad, but if you don't have any other options, we can do so. We can exchange particular colors for particular value using these variables declared inside body of activity but outside of any method. And here our SIGBARs are called in following way. Red, green, blue. Our activity background is called main layout. and that means I am not using getColor method here, what is given for me. And then you can see here that we create particular change listener which takes parameters to particular seek bars. So API, how these listeners are declared and how they work is different from standard Java, from let's say Swing applications. And as I told you, that everything which is standard Java is the same in Android up to Java 8, but all other frameworks etc. are different. And what is different here that on progress changed we had to create this listener for each particular object, but here it takes this object as a parameter given to it. So API is a little bit different, and because of that our initialization is also a little bit different. Yeah, but Alt-Shift-A basic operation. For this did I change my keyboard bindings? Oh yeah. Still no cigar. Basic operations work, but advanced operations are different. So that means I need to green blue. And references are initialized to these objects. Change listener is implemented. This is not to do. We will happy with this. Here we do nothing. Here we do nothing. So here we have to implement even 3 methods for the change listener. But we don't need to implement these others. We need only on value changed, because that's enough for us. And we can try to run it, and I will run it on my virtual machine. It's easier to share on screen. And something is even working. So general thing is the same, details are completely different. For example, color. No nice API to set separate values for red, green and blue color. You have to set this color like a binary mask, where red color is the greatest value, green color somewhere in the middle, and blue color is last numbers in this color. So this also doesn't look very nice. This is okay. And this is of course not very nice, how you need to link together your view part with your actual controller. And now first we need to set initial background color to black, and I think that if we will call update background here, if we created such method, there should be some faster updates available as well, but I don't remember. Yeah, so because initial sliders are at 0, so that's one requirement is completed. And we can refactor this code a little bit so that it's under this to do. So this to do is done. This to do is also done. And yeah, I do not know about this get color. This is just a more handy method to see these colors as normal parts of total color, which is does here as well. So we can do here like if we like get color of color R color green and color blue. It's auto formatted quite strangely. Because here we see plus. And this should work as well. So that's about implementation. Now about tests. In Android there are two different kinds of tests. One is JUnit test, which runs inside the same virtual machine in which you run your Android Studio. So no any virtual machine is needed for this Android device emulator, etc. And this test is quite simple. What you need to implement is methods which returns these values of these colors. And because we exchange values of colors between this cbar change listener and method through these variables outside these methods. This is typical example how you can exchange data if local variables doesn't work. So you shouldn't be very proud of them because it's coupling. For beginners it may be a little bit harder to understand and debug, but this is one of typical examples, and we just need to make these getters for these. What is wrong here? Color, not coral. And get red, green, color green, red, green, blue, or blue. So nothing very exciting, but when you have implemented it, you can see that, for example, this JUnit test can be executed inside Android Studio itself. So that is good thing that you don't need to have this Android emulator, this virtual machine, to run these tests. What is not so good is that to do these tests about actual business, you need to do something like this. You have to create this new instance of main activity, that is easy. What is not so easy is that here, when you want to call, I will show you. For example, you may want to test something like this. So that's easy. And then you want to call on create method, for example, to test these parts. But here you have to pass reference of bundle element, which is base bundle, which is also, so here you have something like application context. What would be application context for web applications? And if you are lazy and you just try to do something like this, I think you will get the null pointer exception. See here. So you need to do something like new bundle, but for this new bundle, again, there is no good constructor which takes some other parameters, and you know how not null in this level, so this bundle element is not null, but when you try to run it, you will get still null pointer exception, because here is also inside this bundle should be some data structures. So if you are curious about this, test. So that is problem. So this API is not so nice. And you see that you need to actually do mock it, you need to mock it up. And this is the same, I think, yeah, the Mockito framework which we used for database test example. So to create this bundle properly, you need to create it properly, etc. But this is too deep discussion to set it up. So therefore, this test doesn't do much. It just shows you that there's possibility to do some of test automations in unit level without running it with virtual machine. And then there is Android test, also as open source, which uses Android automation possibilities, where you can test it on system level. And system level in this case means if it's graphical application, you emulate user activities. And how does it work? It works here in a such way that you initialize these variables to these elements and then change their properties using their API. And here you change their property and you check, for example, that it is changed. This test runs much slower because it needs to be running on this Android device emulator. But good thing is that you can test it on system level. You can test these emulate user activities, how it will actually work when user does something. And again, details, how exactly this works, are completely different for this AssertJ framework, which we used for Swing framework for Java application. But ideas, how do you work them, is quite similar. And when these tests are passing, you can assume that it is done. You need to share this project on so-called bootcamp server. If you go to Git, advanced things for Git, manage remotes. We cloned this project and we see that we already have a remote repository called region, which points to this URL, which I showed to you. You can see it even through the web browser. So, but it is read-only. You can clone it, but you cannot push it. So what you have to do, you have to create another remote repository on so-called bootcamp server, and if Butsu server doesn't work to you, you can refer to it as tools.odo.lv. So you connect to it using SSH connection. Use 00 for me at, let's say, tools.odo.lv. And then we need to create another folder inside our home folder. Android underscore your identifier. Go to this folder and create bare Git repository. And exit out of this. And here it's described how you can do it in command line. So but you can also update it through the graphical interface if you like. So it's SSH u00 at tools.odo.lv home user 00, Android user 00, and we can add slash at the end because it's actually a folder. But this will also work. It's similarly to web servers. Let's double check it. U00 tools.lv home. Looks good to me. And then if you work in integrated development environment, you go git commit. You see all these changes. I will add everything, and it is activity 17, I think. Yeah. Commit and push. Why didn't it ask for password? I think I do not have. Let's double check. So that means somewhere inside some settings this password still was saved for me. Even though I think I cleaned up all these settings for Android Studio. Let's double check. Yeah, nothing to commit, working directory clean, and my branch is up to date with origin master. So that's about this activity. Let's double check that. And I will not do optional task. For example, if you are not sure that you have pushed properly your Android project to the server, you can clone it in different folder and then check that what you have cloned from server is the same as what you pushed to the server. But for me, this information that my branch is up to date to this remote named origin and master branch and nothing to commit working tree clean, for me this is enough. So, any questions or comments on that?